Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so he said, "Hi, Mike," or "Hey, Mike, this is Dave Leetsma. How are you doing this morning?" And I said, "I really don't know, Dave. You're going to have to help me or to tell me." And he said, "Well, I think you're going to be pretty good after this phone call because we want to make you an astronaut." 13 years after that, it's May 17th, 2009, and I'm on Space Shuttle Atlantis about. Now, if you were thinking about, did he talk about the view of Earth on this page? And he didn't. It was all about how he got to work for NASA. Okay, about to go out and do a spacewalk on the Hubble Space Telescope. And our task that day was to repair an instrument that had failed. This instrument was used by scientists to detect the atmospheres of far off planets. Planets and other solar systems could be analyzed using this spectrograph to see if we might find a planet that was Earth-like or a planet that could support life. And just when they got good at doing this, the power supply on this instrument failed. It blew. So the instrument could no longer be used. And there was no way really to replace this unit or to repair the instrument because when they launched this thing and they got it ready for space flight, they really buttoned it up. They didn't want anybody to screw with this thing. It was buttoned up with an access panel that blocked the power supply that had failed. This access panel had 117 small screws with washers, and just to play it safe, they put glue on the screw threads so they would never come apart. You know, it could withstand a space launch, and there was no way we could get in to fix this thing. But we really wanted the Hubble's capability back. So we started working, and for 5 years, we designed a spacewalk. We designed over 100 new space tools to be used at great taxpayers' expense. Millions of dollars, thousands of people worked on this. And my buddy, Mike Good, we called him Bueno, he and I were going to go out to do this spacewalk. I was going to be the guy doing the repair. And inside was Drew Feutzel, one of my best friends. He was going to read me the checklist. And we had practiced for years and years for this. They built us our own practice instrument and gave us our own set of tools so we could practice in our office in our free time, during lunch, after work, and on the weekends. We became like one mind. So this page is all about how they work together to try to figure out how to fix that piece of equipment. So nothing about the view of Earth yet. But now we're on page 54. So there is going to be a quote that we're going to use from this page. So watch for it as I read. So turn to page 54. He would say it, I would do it. We had our own language, and now was the day to go out and do this task. The thing I was most worried about when leaving the airlock that day was my path to get to the telescope, because it was along the side of the space shuttle. And if you look over the edge of the shuttle, it's like looking over a cliff with 350 miles to go down to the planet, and there are no good handrails. When we're spacewalking, we like to grab onto things with our space gloves and be nice and steady. But I got to this one area along the side of the shuttle and there was nothing good to grab. I had to grab a wire or a hose or a knob or a screw, and I'm kind of a big goon. And when there's no gravity, you can get a lot of momentum built up. So there is one section that talks about the way the Earth looked from up above. And if you found this quote and if you look over the edge of the shuttle, it's like looking over a cliff with 350 miles to go down to the planet, and there are no good handrails. So if you go back to your activity page 14.3, the next quote we're going to use is from page 54. And if you look over the edge of the shuttle, comma, it's like looking over a cliff with 350 miles to go down to the planet. And whoops. And there are no good handrails. And then that's from page 54. You do have to put the page number as well. So at this time, if you'd like to pause my video, you can pause it and go ahead and write that. And then we'll do the next section in a moment. So now the next question is, what is the author's emotions now? Well, think about if you're looking over the edge of something and you're looking down 350 miles down, right? And handrails are there to secure you, to help you to hold on. So he is feeling very nervous about the mission and nervous about being up so high. So for what emotion is the author feeling? Nervousness, right? Now, how does the earth look to the author here? He doesn't use the words beautiful. You can tell he's very nervous about floating away or falling. So the view looks very scary. So it looks scary to him. Okay, if you need a moment, you may pause the video to finish writing. We have 2 more quotes to do. All right, would you turn to page 54? So he said at the bottom, and when there's no gravity, you can get a lot of momentum built up. Now turn to 55. And I could go spinning off into space. I knew I had a safety tether that would probably hold, but I also had a heart that I wasn't so sure about. I knew they would get me back. I just wasn't sure when they would get back or what they would get back at the end of the tether when they reeled me in. So I was really concerned about this. I took my time and I got through the treacherous path and out to the telescope. The first thing I had to do was to remove a handrail from the telescope that was blocking the access panel. There were 2 screws on the top and they came off easily. And there was 1 screw on the bottom right and that came out easily. The 4th screw is not moving. My tool is moving, but the screw is not. I look close and it's stripped. And I realize that the handrail's not coming off, which means I can't get to the access panel with these 117 screws that I've been worrying about for 5 years, which means I can't get to the power supply that failed, which means we're not going to be able to fix the instrument today, which means all these smart scientists can't find life on other planets. And I'm to blame for this. And I could see what they would be saying in the science books of the future. This was going to be my legacy. My children and my grandchildren would read this in their classrooms. We would know if there was life on other planets, but Gabby and Daniel's dad, my children would suffer from this. Gabby and Daniel's dad broke the Hubble Space Telescope, so we'll never know. And through this nightmare that had just begun, I looked at my buddy Bueno next to me in his spacesuit, and he was there to assist in the repair, but could not take over my role. He had his own responsibility, and I was the one trained to do the now broken part of the repair. It was my job to fix this thing. I turned and looked into the cabin where my 5 crewmates were, and I realized nobody in there had a spacesuit on. They couldn't come out here and help me. And then I actually looked at the Earth. I looked at our planet. I thought, there are billions of people down there, but there's no way I'm going to get a house call on this one. No one can help me. I felt deep loneliness, and it wasn't just a Saturday afternoon with a book alone. I felt detached from the earth. I felt that I was by myself, and everything that I knew and loved and that made me feel comfortable was far away. And then it started getting dark and cold. Because we travel 17,500 miles an hour, 90 minutes is 1 lap around the earth. So it's 45 minutes of sunlight and 45 minutes of darkness. And when you enter the darkness, it is not just darkness. It's the darkest black I have ever experienced. It's the complete absence of light. It gets cold and I could feel the coldness and I could sense the darkness coming, and it just added to my loneliness. For the next hour or so, we tried all kinds of things. I was going up and down the space shuttle trying to figure out where I needed to go to get the next tool to try to fix this problem, and nothing was working. And then they called up after about an hour and 15 minutes of this and said they wanted me to go to the front of the shuttle to a toolbox and get vice grips and tape. I thought to myself, we are running out of ideas. I didn't even know we had tape on board. I'm going to be the first astronaut to use tape in space during a spacewalk. Oh, my dad would like that. He loves fixing everything with duct tape. But I followed the directions. I got to the front of the space shuttle and I opened up the toolbox and there was the tape. At that point, I was very close to the front of the orbiter, right by the cabin window. Now, before we continue, did any of you catch where they talked about his view from Earth here? Okay, if you started here and then I actually looked at the Earth, so he's actually saying, this is what I saw. I looked at our planet and I thought there are billions of people down there, but there's no way I'm gonna get a house call on this one. No one can help me. Okay, so that is what we're going to type in number 3. Don't forget the beginning quotes. And then, excuse me, I actually looked at the Earth. I looked at our planet and I thought there are billions of people down there, but there's no way I'm gonna get a house call on this one. No one can help me. And that's page 56. So don't forget to put the page number. Okay, at this time, click pause so that you can copy down the quote, and we're going to talk about the author's emotion. What was the author's feeling? Okay, you probably pressed begin again, play, and the next line actually gives you a hint at what he's feeling. He says, I felt this deep loneliness. So they actually told you on this one. They cheated a little bit. Okay, but it's very helpful. So you want loneliness. Okay, so now, how did the Earth look to the author? Well, it looked like it was very far away. Okay, I'm excited to continue reading this. So at this time, if you need a little extra time, go ahead and pause the video. And then we're going to continue here reading. So would you please look at the bottom of page 56? I'm going to start with, at that point, I was very close to the front of the orbiter, right by the cabin window. And so turn to page 157. I knew that my best pal was in there trying to help me out, and I could not even stand to think of looking at him because I felt so bad about the way this day was going with all the work he and I had put in. But through the corner of my eye, through my helmet, you know, just the side there, I can kind of see that he's trying to get my attention. And I look up at him and he's just cracking up, smiling and giving me the okay sign. And I'm like, is there another spacewalk going on out here? I really can't talk to him because if I say anything, the ground will hear. You know, Houston, the control center. So I'm kind of like playing charades with him. I'm like, what, are you nuts? And I didn't want to look before because I thought he was going to give me the finger because he's going to go down in the history books with me. But he's saying, no, we're okay. You just hang in there a little bit longer. We're going to make it through this. We're in this together. You're doing great. Just hang in there. Okay, so I apologize for his language. He was being a little bit crass there. But remember, in personal narratives, people kind of use their own words. And so this might have been more like the way he talks, even though it's not like how we talk in school. So, and if there was ever a time in my life that I needed a friend, it was at that moment. And there was my buddy, just like I saw in that movie, the camaraderie of those guys sticking together. I didn't believe him at all. I figured that we were out of luck, but I thought, at least if I'm going down with my best pal. Okay, turn to page 58. And as I turned to make my way back over the treacherous path one more time, Houston called up and told us what they had in mind. They wanted me to use the tape to tape the bottom of the handrail and then see if I could yank it off the telescope. They said it was going to take about 60 pounds of force for me to do that. And Drew answers the call and he goes, 60 pounds of force? He goes, Mass, I think you got that in you. What do you think? He calls them Massachusetts for short because that's where he went to school, Mass. I'm like, you bet, Drew. Let's go get this thing. I get back to the telescope and I put my hand on that handrail and the ground calls again and they go, well, Drew, you know, you guys are okay to do this, but right now we don't have any downlink from Mike's helmet camera. I've got these cameras mounted on my helmet so they can see everything I'm doing. It's kind of like your mom looking over your shoulder when you're doing your homework, you know? And they go, we don't have any downlink for another 3 minutes, but we know we're running late on time here. So if you have to, and I'm thinking, let's do it now while they can't watch, because the reason I'm taping this thing is if any debris gets loose, they're going to get all worried and it's going to be another hour and we'll never fix this thing. We've been through enough already. So I'm like, let's do it now while mom and dad aren't home. Let's have the party. So I say, Drew, I think we should do it now. And Drew's like, go. And bam, the thing comes right off. I pull out my power tool and now I've got the access panel with those 117 little bitty screws with their washers and glue. And I'm ready to get each one of them. So page 59. And I pull the trigger on my power tool and nothing happens. And I look, I see that the battery is dead. And I turn my head to look at Bueno, who's in his spacesuit, again, looking at me like, what else can happen today? And I said, Drew, the battery's dead in this thing. I'm going to go back to the airlock and we're going to swap out the battery and I'm going to recharge my oxygen tank because I was getting low on oxygen. I needed to get a refill. And he said, go. And I was going back over that shuttle and I noticed two things. One was that treacherous path that I was so scaredy cat sissy pants about going over. It wasn't scary anymore. That in the course of those couple hours of fighting this problem, I had gone up and down that thing about 20 times and my fear had gone away because there was no time to be a scaredy cat. It was time to get the job done. And what were we doing was more important than me being worried. It was actually kind of fun going across that little jungle gym back and forth over the shuttle. The other thing I noticed was that I could feel the warmth of the sun. We were about to come into a day pass, and the light in space, when you're in the sunlight, is the brightest, whitest, purest light that I have ever experienced, and it brings with it warmth. I could feel that coming, and I actually started feeling optimistic. Optimistic means positive. Sure enough, the rest of the spacewalk went well. We got all those screws out, a new power supply in, buttoned it up. They tried it, turned it on from the ground. The power supply was working. The instrument had come back to life, and at the end of the spacewalk, after about 8 hours, I'm inside the airlock getting things ready for Bueno and me to come back inside. But my commander says, okay, on this page, there's going to be another description of the view from Earth. Hey, Mass, you know, you've got about 15 minutes before Bueno's going to be ready to come in. Why don't you go outside of your airlock and enjoy the view? So I go outside and take my tether and I clip it on the handrail and I let go and I just look. And the Earth from our altitude at Hubble, we're 350 miles up. We can see the curvature, the curve of the Earth. We can see the roundness of our home planet. And it's the most magnificent thing I've ever seen. It's like looking into heaven. It's paradise. And I thought to myself, this is the view that I imagined in the movie theater all those years ago. And as I looked at the Earth, I also noticed that I could turn my head and I could see the moon and the stars and the Milky Way galaxy. I could see our universe and I could turn back and I could see our beautiful planet. Okay. So the last quote we're going to be writing down is this paragraph quote right here. So I go outside and I take my tether and I clip it to the handrail and I let go and I just look. And the Earth from our altitude at Hubble, we're 350 miles up. We can see the curvature. We can see the roundness of our home planet. And it's the most magnificent thing I've ever seen. It's like looking into heaven. It's paradise. Okay. So let's go back to our activity page 14.3. And this is where we write. So I go outside and I take my tether and I clip it on a handrail and I let go. And I just look. And the Earth from our altitude at Hubble, we're 350 miles up. We can see the curvature. We can see the roundness of our home planet. Okay, so hold on one second. What is it doing? Okay, I'm going to have to add my text down here. Our home planet, and it's the most magnificent thing I've ever seen. It's like looking into heaven. It's paradise. Page 60. Let me lengthen this out so you can see it. Okay, at this time, you probably are going to need to pause this so that you can copy that down and then unpause when you're done so that we could talk about the author's emotions. Okay, welcome back. So now the author's emotions that he's feeling. So he knows the spacewalk is over and that he was successful. So the first emotion he's feeling is relief because everything was safe and he fixed what he needed to, and complete happiness as well. And what did he think it looked like? It looked like paradise, right? He says it right there. It's paradise. Okay, so now we just have a little bit more to read on this page. Okay, so now let's go to 61. And that moment changed my relationship with the Earth. because for me, the earth had always been a kind of safe haven, where I could go to work or be in my home or take my kids to school. But I realized it really wasn't that. It really is its own spaceship. And I had always been a space traveler. All of us here today, even tonight, we're on this spaceship Earth, amongst all the chaos of the universe, whipping around the sun and around the Milky Way galaxy. A few days later, we get back. Our families come to meet us at the airfield, and I'm driving home to my house with my wife, my kids in the back seat, and she starts telling me about what she was going through that Sunday that I was spacewalking, and how she could tell listening, watching the NASA television channel, how sad I was, that she detected a sadness in my voice that she had never heard from me before, and it worried her. Did you know that the spacewalks are televised? You do get to see spacewalks. I think there's a channel called C-SPAN, and they'll show the spacewalks, but you can actually hear them talking. And so his wife was watching from home. Okay, so great work. We accomplished everything that we wanted to accomplish. We finished this book, and then we finished activity page 14.3. So right now, if you have extra time, double check that page is all complete, because I will check for it when I come back on Thursday. In the meantime, any extra time, would you please work on the IXLs for ELA? You have 2 new ones, 14 total are due. Take your time with it. A lot of you save the harder ones for last. And then you can always silent read on Mayan and take AR quizzes. Okay, great work today. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Okay, bye for now.